Should we still sing hymns in our worship experiences? What are we missing if we don't? We'll talk about it today.
This is the definitive podcast for helping you plan, create, and execute dynamic worship experiences at your church. Useful, practical content in the areas of production, worship, communications, first impressions, and more. This is Making Sunday Happen.
Hey friends, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you here. Today we have a special treat as I welcome Todd Smith and Allan from the group Selah. Selah's music has more than 500 million streams. They have sold over 4 million albums and have 11 GMA Dove Awards to their credit. Selah's Allan, Amy Perry, and Todd Smith have earned a reputation for not only delivering compelling new anthems, but also reviving great hymns of the faith. They have populated culture with such enduring hits as Press On, Wonderful Merciful Savior, You Raise Me Up, Hope of the Broken World, All My Praise, and more. It was a real treat to talk to these guys and have these guys on the podcast. They're very down to earth, easy to talk to. You're going to enjoy my conversation with them today. We talked about worship in today's culture, specifically about hymns, the importance of hymns. Are we missing them in the church? Are we missing the theology? Are we becoming more biblically illiterate, not having hymns in our worship experiences as much? We'll talk about all that and more with the guys from Selah today. So we're going to dive into my interview with both of these guys right after this. For the last few years, our 1230 Media team has had the honor and privilege of producing media content, custom media content, for our great partners and friends at Answers in Genesis. And this year we've partnered with them to produce media content for their 2023 VBS curriculum, Keepers of the Kingdom. We've produced lyric videos, drama videos, instructional videos, countdown game videos, and more that are used in thousands of churches around the world. If you are a church or ministry that needs custom graphics or video, we would love to help you out as well. We would love to come alongside and partner with you in ministry to create compelling visuals to help you share the gospel. You can contact our team today at 1230.media/quote. That's 1230.media/quote. For 25 years, Selah's renditions of hymns and inspirational classics have captured the attention of listeners around the world, many who have never before been exposed to hymns. The group celebrated their 25th anniversary with a new Christmas project and Greatest Hymns Volume 3, both full-length recordings that released last year. Today, I welcome Todd Smith and Allan from Selah. Welcome, guys. Glad you're here. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, thanks so much, Carl.
Hey, thanks for having us, Carl.
Yeah, man. So you guys are celebrating 25 years. Huge feat in the music industry, especially. I could go over a host of awards and numbers that God has used you guys greatly. But take me back a little bit. How did the group start? Todd, this was kind of you and your sister, right? Was your original female singer? Is that right?
Yeah, actually, it was Allan. Yeah, it was Allan and me and my sister Nicole. And essentially what happened was Allan, he played piano. We went to Belmont University, which has a great music business school, songwriting, just music in general. It's one of the places to be. In fact, the year before I went there, my parents were missionaries, and so I grew up in Africa, and I would go for the summers. After we moved back to the States, I'd go for the summers, and we do ministry there with the Bible college that they have. Got malaria really bad, was supposed to go to a college in Indiana, and played soccer and made the soccer team, but got sick. The malaria came back and almost killed me, and so it took me out that whole year, and in the process was just so depressed, had no idea what I was doing. My sister Nicole was finishing up at Wheaton College, and a friend of hers, a fellow student at Wheaton, had done a semester at Belmont, because I had no idea there was such a school. And she was like, hey, there's this school. They study the music industry, they study songwriting, they study commercial music. And I was like, I'm done. I'm there. So we moved down and started going there. And I knew Allan as a session singer because even back then, Belmont had 2 or 3 studios. So Brad Paisley was a fellow student. I think that was one of the first sessions we met on. Was Brad was doing a session and Allan and I were doing backup for him. And then there were just different ones. And so there'd be these showcases that you try out for, like the rock showcase or the gospel showcase. And so I had Allan be one of my backup singers along with my sister Nicole. She was waiting tables and met Mike Curb and his family at the restaurant that she was at, but never gave him a tape or, back then you'd give people, Vince Gill might get back in his valet car and the valet was a singer who, put a demo in his cassette.
Yeah.
And
what's a cassette?
No. Yeah. Even back then there could be cassettes. We go back that far. So
I'm with you.
Allan had got asked to, or his worship pastor would do concerts every once in a while. So he was like, hey, could you find someone to lead? And so Allan asked me. I did that a couple of times. And then we did it for his church one time. And the new pastor, he was kind of getting tested out, I guess. And he'd finally reached that point to where the congregation wanted to vote him in as the official pastor. So I led worship. And he said, hey, would you guys consider doing a concert next month? Because that's my official, official pastor party or, right. Service or whatever. So I roped Nicole into it and we just picked, we didn't have time to write anything. So we picked, we all grew up on a lot of hymns, worship songs, songs from Africa, and then song from our church. And so we just did that night. And then Allan got asked to sing, to play at another church. We did that again. And then we sang for a youth group, actually, of all things. And I remember driving up to Indiana and going, why did we agree to sing a bunch of hymns for 16-year-olds? Like, this is going to suck. And ended up being this amazing night. This one kid came up to Allan, who was like 16. He was like, man, that It Is Well song, it's so cool. You guys write that. And, just different things. Like they made us sing His Eyes on the Sparrow twice. Like they wouldn't let us continue with everything. Yeah. And my mom attended, she drove down from Detroit, where I'm originally from. And we had no clue. Like we were just singing and she's like, there's something here. There's something nobody else is doing. Like you guys, there's something really special in the way you connected with these kids. You need to record this. And so I was like, Mom, we don't have money. Like I've just graduated. I'm parking cars and waiting tables. And my grandpa just passed away. And so she was like, she had some inheritance. And so she's like, I'll fund it. And Allan said, you know what, my roommate, he's just starting on this new system called Pro Tools. And he could maybe engineer it or give us a deal. And so we rented out the studio that he worked at, like from 10 p.m. to like 2 a.m., like all the weird hours when all the country artists who had big budgets were done. That's when, we would show up. And so we recorded it in 2 weeks. It was all piano vocal. And then Nicole was signed with Curb Records. By that time, she and Mike had become really good friends. And he had asked for a tape of hers. And so she gave him one, listened to it that night, called her the next day and said, hey, I want to sign you. That was about 2 years before we made this project. And so I'd moved back up to Detroit to go to Bible school. I was actually in Africa doing some mission work with my dad, and came back to a phone call from Nicole saying, hey, Mike heard our project and he wants to sign us as a trio. Oh. And so that's kind of how that whole thing started. And
kept her on as a solo artist as well, right?
Kept her. She was still doing more of a pop thing, a mainstream thing. But he was like and that was, again, that's one of those things too, where like, especially for worship leaders or anyone working in the church, you might have a pastor or an executive pastor or somebody else who sees things in you that you don't see. That they see potential in you or the ability in you, and they're older and they're wiser. And so they can tell, hey, there's really something here. Like my mom seen that, or Mike seen that. And because I was going to be a solo, I was going to be a rock guy. I'd finished at Belmont, but I had 2 years of of Bible college back in Detroit. Allan was doing country music and session work, and Nicole was working on her pop thing. And then this all just kind of fell into place, and we had no intention of doing it.
That's awesome. Allan, as you look back, this is 25 years of ministry here, and hearing that story again, look back and tell me, what are you thankful for? What are you amazed that God has allowed you guys to be a part of?
Oh, goodness. Just, yeah, you're right. I mean, first of all, just like what you were saying in your introduction, in the music industry, it's so competitive. Like even Christian music industry, very competitive, but the whole music industry is incredibly competitive. So to have lasted a quarter century, especially nowadays, like a lot of my favorite artists, like Elton John, Dolly Parton, Barbra Streisand, who, a lot of those artists have had 40, 50, 60 plus years career, the Rolling Stones, all those guys. I think those days are really gone. I don't know, even like Taylor Swift, as huge as she is now, I don't know that she'll have a 50-year career. Maybe not. But I think the music industry's changed so much that I think that 40, 50, 60-year career is kind of over. So I'm thankful that we've had 25 years. I think now that's a new kind of, that's a good long career so far. In the music industry. And of course, we hope to keep going, we'll maybe not, another 25 years I would be, what would I be? Oh, I'd be almost 80, I guess. So we'll see. But so I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful for longevity. I'm thankful that people, still are liking what we do, that we're still reaching hearts and touching people. That means a lot. But yeah, looking back, and just as far as any, like, were you meaning, Carl, like even just some highlights over the 25 years or just some sweet moments?
Yeah. What are some big highlights?
Yeah. Well, I think for Todd and I both, to be able to work with artists that we view, that formed us, like people that we, I don't want to use the word idolize, but you know what I mean? Like artists that you've looked up to were a huge part of forming your own musical journey. We've been able to do that with a lot of artists, like especially for me in particular, 20 years ago, 21 years ago now in 2002, on our first Christmas album, Rose of Bethlehem, I got to do a duet with Dolly Parton, which was amazing. And she was amazing. And of course, I'm from East Tennessee. And I know her music since I was a child. And that meant the world to me. In the Christian field, we just got to do some stuff with Amy Grant at the end of this past year, a couple of things. And other artists too, like with, we did the big K-Love 40th anniversary a few months ago. And, we were sharing it. Todd and I are in there in the dressing room sharing it with Michael W. Smith, who we had toured with back in 2005, but we were in the dressing room with Russ Taff and Michael W. Smith and all these guys. And like Russ was a huge influence on Todd. So it's it's still weird for me. It was that night, because I walked in and we were just talking with Michael. Like I reintroduced myself to Michael just because it'd been a while since we'd seen each other. And I was like, Michael, I'm Allan. I'm in a group. And he said, Allan, he's like, dude, I know who you are. He said, I know who you guys are. He said, I know your music. And I kind of laughed. And I said, well, it's been a while. I didn't want you to, he said, no. And to be treated, I guess one of the really special things and still that amazes me is to be treated as a peer, by some of your musical heroes is a pretty amazing thing. And we've gotten to work with, like I said, just a number of our fellow artists that are our age that we love, we love Point of Grace and Nicole Nordeman, and to be able to do things with them and kind of come up, Point of Grace started a few years before us, but like Nicole Nordeman started the same year we did. We were kind of like the class of 97, 98, and so there aren't a lot of us. Like I look back now, like from that year, that I looked at an artist roster not long ago. I found an old concert, like a multi-concert thing. And I think Nicole and us were the only two that were still even remotely active. Do you know what I mean? And so it's, so I'm very thankful for longevity, thankful to be able to work with wonderful musicians and have our peers view us as peers is pretty still amazing, still mind blowing to me. But also too, one huge thing, and Todd touched on it, but, I love that we've had a hand, and I don't say this arrogantly at all, but I think we might be one of the few remaining groups that really still do hymns on a very consistent basis. Like I know some other artists, they may put a hymn on an album or whatever, but it's so much a part of our identity. And I love that our fans love it. But I love, like Todd talked about, in that very first concert we did for teenagers, when that young guy came up to me and said, hey man, did you write that It Is Well song, and I was able to open a hymnal and say, no, it's right here, and there's a wealth of great stuff in here.
Yeah.
I said most of the songs we sang tonight are in this book, and so and now, here all these years later, we still get people after concerts. We'll get parents. I'm 52, so I'll get people my age and even a little older or even a little younger, parents in their 40s. They're saying, hey, they're like, my kids wouldn't know hymns if I didn't play your albums for them. We'll listen to your CDs in my car, or we'll listen to your CDs at the house. And they're like, and that's the only way they know hymns, because my church no longer sings those hymns. And I also love it. Older folks at our concert, people in their 70s and 80s, they'll usually talk to us afterwards and they'll be like, I'm so glad you guys are still singing those songs. And for them, a lot of times it brings back a really sweet memory, like a memory of a parent, and so I want those songs to stay alive. It's amazed me. I told another interviewer a few months ago, it almost seems like the church has hastened to throw that part of our heritage away. And I don't quite know why. Do you know what I mean? I don't either. The songs are so beautiful and they're so singable. Like, to me, a lot of their tunes and I don't want to bash modern music at all. There's good music all across the board, and there's some bad hymns. I think there was one in the Baptist hymnal. I think there was one about something. It's like God of something in outer space. You know what I'm saying? It was just a weird. I mean, you know what I mean. So I know there's good and bad in all kinds, but on the whole, the hymn tunes to me are way more singable than a lot of modern choruses. Yeah, and the kind of repetition kind of gets me nowadays. If we're just having an honest conversation. So I generally favor hymns. I'm trying to be open to more modern music, and there are some beautiful modern songs, but like, I don't know why the church has hastened to throw away these gorgeous things that are usually very theologically sound, very beautiful singable melodies. And that's amazed me, actually, that when it kind of started, like, adding in praise choruses or adding in different songs, that's fine. I get it. But it's like, keep them both. Like, do a good mix. Don't throw away one for the other. And I've noticed too, a lot of churches we go to, and even the church I've been attending, if they happen to break out into a hymn or part of a hymn as part of a song, it's the hymn part where everybody starts singing. Or if they add a hymn in between all these worship songs, like, I'll look around and see a lot of people not singing. When that hymn comes up, all of a sudden you hear the whole congregation singing because they know it. They grew up with it. Yeah, and one more thing, then I'll quit yapping here. But also too, music on a musical end, when churches kind of took away the hymn books. I can read music. I know a lot of people can't, but I can read music. And but even if you can't read music, you can kind of see in a hymnal, the shape of, this kind of goes down, up, down, and you could listen and then kind of visualize the melody. Now that a lot of things are just lyrics on a screen, like, even me with a pretty quick musical ear, I can't join. If I don't know the song, I can't sing it. Like, I have to sit there and listen. And I'm pretty fast again, but I have to sit there and listen for a verse, and then I have to listen for a chorus, and then I'm like, okay, I think I've kind of got it, and then I'll look up at the lyrics. But if I had music, if I had actual a hymnal or sheet music for it, I could sing it right away. So I hate too that and as a young kid, I started learning to read music out of a hymnal. I hate that maybe we're cutting off a younger generation who might explore music in a way. If they had that visual with them every Sunday, they'd be like, oh, I want to learn what these things do and what this means. But that's gone because it's just on a screen. So, all right, I've said my piece.
You're great, man. This is great. Really I should throw my notes away because you just hit on every question that I'm just kidding. So I think there's been kind of a reassurance. I don't know if you guys saw the Jesus Music documentary. Yes. My friends, the Irwins,
but everyone keeps talking about it. So
you got to see it.
You're gonna go away today and go watch it because it's kind of I don't know why anybody hasn't done this yet. I was talking with John Irwin, who directed it the other day, and he's like, I don't know. We got it's like the history of Christian music. Yeah. And you guys, and I didn't really realize this. I was kind of in radio. I started in radio late 90s. Thereabouts, and that was kind of the golden age. Like the late 80s into the 90s was really a golden age of contemporary Christian music. And I guess Michael W. Smith, Amy Grant really back it up to Calvary Chapel, Jesus Movement, Petra,
Larry
like
Norman.
those Larry like those guys, and then it kind of, but then it early 90s it really hit hard. Everybody, so you guys kind of came in to that wave of really where it really hit. So it's kind of neat for you guys to see that. I'm sure. Todd, do you have any? You haven't seen it, man. You gotta see this document. It's great.
I gotta see it because
fantastic.
so many of those groups are people that I like. Larry Norman was and what strikes me too, what I find really interesting, especially with someone like him, we don't write honestly like he did. Like we wouldn't dare to do that. It needs to be positive and encouraging and uplifting and safe for the whole family. And it's like, okay, but is safe necessarily good?
That's right.
For us to grow. Like the Bible isn't safe. Scripture is, almost like an R-rated or X-rated book that obviously it's written by the Holy Spirit. So it has the power to cleanse and convict and restore.
Why should the devil have all the good music?
Right. and it really is. I mean, like seriously, one of his songs, and I remember I wanted to sing it in chapel at Belmont, and the chaplain was like, man, I don't know if you should. And it was one of those things kind of like where I was a bit naive and didn't realize what I was singing, but I was like, it's honest and I want to make the point. He eventually let me do it. And then afterwards when I sing it, I'm like, did I really sing that? Like I could totally see what, but it was, why don't you look into Jesus? He's got the answers. And in one verse, he says, gonorrhea on Valentine's Day, and you're still looking for the perfect lay. You think, rock and roll is such a free, you'll be dead before you're 33, shooting junk till you're half insane. I mean, like all of these honest lyrics that I would never be caught dead writing in a session, right. Or like when David was so honest about his pain or depression, or why don't you basically kill my enemies, kind of thing. Yeah. We don't write honestly like that. It's got to be a worship song that gets into the chorus by, 45 seconds and goes here and then goes there. And so I do think there is there is a level of, not that we're being dishonest, but we're not dealing with a lot of issues or reality that we're going through and being able to write that in song, and that being a natural part of it, in the same way that you do have the, yes, we have the beautiful Psalms that are all about the glory of God and his holiness and his righteousness. But then you also have these Psalms that are just kind of dark, and I don't feel, when I talk with my songwriter friends, and a lot of times I'm not necessarily concerned with radio, if I'm even working on a solo project. And so there's kind of a relief for them there. They literally switch their brain off and go, okay, so we can write this. It's okay to say that. Yeah, that's okay to do that, that kind of thing. So it's not to say there aren't very honest, authentic worship songs that are being written. There are, but when I look back at like Larry Norman or
Keith Green,
Jesus rose from the dead, and you can't even get out of bed, and that's me.
Right.
That convicts me because I'm that person who is just kind of going through the motions and not, man, today I get to share my faith and live this out. And there are people who are dying and I don't care, so having those those honest lyrics, I think, are really important. But I know as a worship leader, you're like, yeah, but I'd get fired I'd get, the church, the older people, because if there's anybody who gets beat up, it's the music pastor. It's like, it was too contemporary. It was too traditional. It was too fluff of a lyric. It was too deep, so there's worship pastors always get beat up with that kind of stuff. But I do think along the lines of what Allan was saying with the hymns, I think another reason why they're so important is because of the theology. Yes. And we live in a TikTok day and a Reels day where, like, even for me, if I'm checking up on the news, I'm listening to ABC or CNN or Fox, like kind of trying to get a variety of stuff, but it's just these 3-minute segments. And in many cases, when you look at TikTok, because I have 4 daughters and my 17-year-old, there might be some post about the world coming to an end. And so she's bringing me this 15-second video that has had an impact on her. And I'm like, honey, they're a little overstepping There's a little bit more to this, but we are getting our news, we're getting our information, we're getting our music in 15-second sound bites. And so when you are leading worship, it's really important that, Paul says we renew our mind through scripture, but it's really, we renew our mind through words, what we take in and what we give out. So I can speak life or death into my family. And there's a psychologist, a doctor named Caroline Leaf. And I remember hearing her share about when you start to think negative thoughts, you start to, you're depressed or you've had an accident, a car accident. There's literal like brain scans that look like dark trees, like images that are created in your head. And those can literally be transformed when you start thinking positive. And I'm not just saying like, just think positive thoughts, but there really is even, if I think about my own heart or my own mind, man, if you can just get so stuck in, I'm going to be angry at this person. And when the Bible says to renew your mind and to forgive and to do it, it literally transforms how you think. And so when you take words that are being sung, that internalizes even deeper, because I might not remember a 30-minute message that a pastor said, but even if eventually I get dementia, I will probably remember a hymn or a worship song that I sang years back. And so as you're leading worship, really look at the lyrics. I understand you need a song that has great melody and connects, but is it truth? Is what you're singing truth? Because those teenagers are taking that in, or those adults are taking that in, and chances are we're not reading our Bibles. Chances are we're not spending time. We're taking in 8 to 9 to 15 hours of social media and Netflix, and we're not countering that with, hey, are we really getting truth in? So when you have those moments of worship, I'm not trying to be dogmatic, like, hey, you better, but man, make sure, are the lyrics true? Is it true theology? Is it accurate? Or is it some prosperity gospel or some kind of thing that's almost, it looks truthful? Like, for example, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Has nothing to do about your American dream. It has nothing to do about you being able to do whatever you set your mind to. The context is God has just, punished Israel, like because of their I'm taking that. I'm out of context. I know the plans I have for you, the plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future.
Yes. I have it on a pillowcase over here. You guys want to?
Yeah, seriously, my wife makes a joke about that all the time. But it is not about you, just being able to, whatever you set your mind to, he's going to help you do. He just told Israel, you defied me. And I think he had just sent them to Babylon, or he just punished them in some severe way. But ultimately, his goal is always love and reconciliation and redemption. And so that's the context of that. Or the whole, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, has nothing to do with the American dream. It has everything to do with Paul saying, being at peace, being content, whether I'm hungry or I'm full, whether I am freezing cold or I'm, in a warm bed, whether I'm this or I'm that, whether I'm being beaten, and he had been through all of it. He said, no matter what it is, I can endure, is really what it's saying. I can endure all things because Christ gives me the strength. And so it's kind of looking at the lyrics and going, okay, is this accurate? Like there was one song on an album, it's called Firm Foundation, that we did. And so we were figuring out all the songs. And there was one song that Amy really loved, which ended up being the title track, Firm Foundation. There was this other song that Allan and I liked more, and it would have been the 11th song. So we had to choose between them. And finally, when we looked at that other song, we both just kind of said, hey, we know what the song, theologically, it was one of those things where we knew what it was saying, but it could kind of go this way. So we're like, hey, it's not worth it. Let's cut that one. And let's do the one that Amy believes in this so much. We don't necessarily like it, but she loves it. And we ended up liking the song after a while, but it did come down to, hey, is the theology accurate or not? So anyways, that's just one thing to throw out there too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Allan, what do you think about that? I that was a great point about theology. I work with a group called Seeds Family Worship. They write word for word scripture songs, and we do all the videos for them. And we've been working with them for like a decade. And this is word for word scripture songs for kids and families. So my kids are 10 and 12, and they've grown up with this music. So it's literally God's word, singing it, that they're storing in their heart. And so I believe the same thing is about hymns that we've kind of missed. Is there's so much theology in hymns that are reaffirming my faith, reaffirming what I believe and why I believe it, and the bedrocks and just a solid foundation of theology. Do you feel, Allan, that we're missing some of that?
Yeah, I do. And it's cool you saying that too about actual scripture songs. Because when I think back in the 90s, there was a series. I remember a friend of mine played me a CD. I can't remember who was singing it, but it was some songs, like actual, literally, and they'd set them to beautiful melodies. And kind of to Todd's point too, like again, like your music memory is so different. I mean, you know, like like you do see those stories all the time about dementia patients or Alzheimer's. They don't know when one of their children is at their bedside or with them, and they start singing a song, or they play music for them that they would know. It's like bam, and it's a different person. So I think it does. I think it's a different part of your brain. It's a different, and I would find myself, well, you know, even like talking about how music, you know, even kids, like you can teach them a lesson or something, but how many of us still remember A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K? You know, we all know that. And for us, you know, Carl, now you may be a little younger than Todd and I, but, you know, growing up, I remember the Schoolhouse Rock stuff, you know, Conjunction, Junction. I mean, you can teach so much through song. And so, yeah, sometimes, and again, for me, you know, I always hate to come across like I'm bashing modern things. I don't want to ever think, hey, everything in the past was the best, and now this stuff is just that's not it. Right. But to me, one thing personally for me, when there's just a lot of repetition on just one line, that gets hard for me in a church service, especially if the song gets to about 7, 8, 9 minutes, and there's just most of it is this one line being repeated. It's hard for me musically because I'm like, isn't there more to say? Didn't you have time in this song? You could say more. Let's dive on in. Right. But also too, you know, even a catchy line, you know, you can only sing that a few minutes and then you're kind of, you know what I mean? But yeah, like hymns, you know, like even just the language, like itself, you know, like how firm a foundation, you saints of the Lord, is laid for your faith in his excellent word. You know, lines like that, you don't quite hear phrases like that anymore, you know, and it's beautiful words that I think have deep meaning. And again, there are beautiful modern songs. Like now it's older now too, but when we, you know, in 2001, well, actually when I moved to Nashville in 1988, I started going to Christ Community Church for a little bit down in you know, a lot of Christian artists at the time went there, Stephen Curtis, a bunch of people. But one Sunday, and I'll never forget it, and Todd had experienced it too. I don't know if on the same day, but it was down at Christ Community. They played a song, and it wasn't a hymn, or, you know, it wasn't an old hymn like I would have known, like, you know, Softly and Tenderly or Amazing Grace. The worship team played a beautiful song called Wonderful, Merciful Savior. And if there'd been room in the pew, I would have fallen to my knees, and I was weeping. But that song struck my heart. But it's, you know, those writers cared to write about the Trinity. It's it's a beautiful, beautiful song. And so right away, I was like, man, I would love to record this one day. You know, if I ever have a way to help spread this song. And then we did. And it was an honor to have the writers contact us and say, wow, you know, you guys really did a wonderful job with our song. That meant the world to us, you know, when a songwriter calls an artist and says, hey, I love what you did with our song. But to me, Wonderful, Merciful Savior is a modern day hymn. Now, granted, that's from the 80s now. So that's what, is that pushing 40 years old almost, or close? But yeah. But you know what I mean? So I know songs today can be written that way and can be meaningful and beautiful. And there's some wonderful ones. But yeah, the depth to me on the whole, I think somebody said once, I can't remember who it was, it's almost like hymns were like the deep end of the pool, and you're luxuriating and diving in this deep, deep water. And a lot of modern songs that maybe just scratch the surface were maybe over in the kiddie pool or something, you know? And so, again, I know there's between each, but on the whole, it seemed to me that theology in the hymns is solid and deep. And I hate that we're missing that.
Yeah.
Hey, Carl, if I could
Yeah.
make one suggestion too, to just any worship leaders out there, especially if they're wanting, maybe there's a hymn that they're wanting to bring in, and maybe it's a situation where in their church there's a family who just lost a child, or just there's some type of suffering or pain or something that they're going through, and this song would be so appropriate. And it may not be a thing where they're going to address directly that family. Maybe they do. But one of the things that I found in 25 years of us doing hymns is when we share the stories behind the songs,
Yeah,
because
great.
so many of them were written out of suffering, out of pain, out of loss, to go through and sing a verse in the chorus. And usually I share before, but let's say they're leading worship and they're doing it. I'm just kind of trying to imagine being in their shoes of singing a verse in the chorus. And then as they're doing that instrumental, where normally you might say a word of encouragement or a Bible verse, maybe they share that story, like it as well, where, Horatio lost 4 daughters in a shipwreck. Or, precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, help me stand. I'm tired and I'm weary and I'm worn. That was Thomas Dorsey after he lost his wife and his baby in pregnancy. And his initial reaction was, God, I have no use for you. He was a worship leader and out leading worship, at crusades and revivals, and gets the news that his wife and his baby died. And there are so many of those stories. And there's some too, where it's not some painful thing like that, but maybe it was something where someone, there is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's vein. The writer who wrote that originally had tried to commit suicide. And on his deathbed, you know how sometimes people it's like they can see heaven before they go. Mm-hmm. And he could see the angels. And the story was that he said, they haven't shut me out. They haven't shut me out. And so I think too, if you're trying to, maybe there's some hymn and maybe all you've done is worship and Hillsong or Chris Tomlin or Selah, whatever it is, and it's like, okay, I'd love to bring the love of God in. Well, there's this beautiful story about the third verse being written on an insane asylum wall and by this Jewish man. And when they took his body out later, they found this poem on the wall. When you're able to, people love stories. That's why Jesus taught in them, and that's why we're drawn to them. And so, and when sermons are given, usually I may not remember all the things the pastor said, but the minute he tells a story, or I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm engaged. When you can make this song more personal, as to, hey, this hymn isn't just this archaic, 17th century, these thous and thys. This is what this Fanny Crosby was going through. She was blind and she was this. And then she wrote, I shall see him face to face and tell the story saved by grace. I think when you can, and there are a lot of books, or you can just Google that could be a great way to help you as a worship leader to not only lead the group of people that are leading worship with you to go, hey, this is the context of this song and why we're singing it. But when you're with the congregation, to be able to break into that at some point, to give them the true story of, because then that makes that writer human, and that makes that song human. And it's like, oh, now I can connect with this in a much better way, even though the English might be a little older, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's great.
Couple other quick things I want to hit you with, and I'll let you go. So, Allan, I want you to speak to this, that, like Todd was saying with worship leaders, do you feel like they have to add to, like, we'll do a hymn, but we'll add our own chorus, or we'll write something new, or it's done in a totally different way that's not, which I guess is fine in certain circumstances, but you guys are kind of more purists, I guess. You want to speak to that? Do you feel it's necessary to bring it to a modern feel necessarily, or can I do it the way that it was written? Am I asking that right?
Yeah. And of course, Todd can chime in too, but yeah, I think absolutely you can do it as it was. Now, there are some songs, that we love these hymns. There's sometimes that you might you might want to add a little lift to or whatever. Now, we don't do that often. We've done it a little bit here and there when we thought it might just add a little to bring a song, say if the hymn is, say, several hundred years old, to bring it to today mostly intact. If you had to add a little bit of something, even then I'm still kind of like, are we, on the whole, for me personally, I'm speaking for me, on the whole, I like doing them pretty well straight up. Now, you can change the style, like on our albums, like we do, Todd had the great idea. We do Victory in Jesus, which I love that hymn. I've always loved it. But he was like, man, I really hear this as like almost an old blues stomp kind of thing. Like it has real acoustic energy, a real blues stomp, and it works great. So style wise, I think you can be pretty, pretty across the board. Now, there are some I remember, growing up, or a lot of times it does seem like a lot of groups or a lot of folks or a lot of churches, even when they're like, say, we have to modernize a hymn, all they mean is we just need to throw a rock band on it. And that I don't think that's true at all. Like I've heard some hymns albums where every hymn ends up just being this whole huge full band on it.
Or the reverse, they could slow it down where it's so somber that I'm like, this feels like it's 300 years old. Like, I mean, I'm like falling asleep right now. Like it's okay to, like some of the hymn writers had a beat to it. Like it's okay to sing that is what I'm getting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. And so on the whole, when we approach it, Carl, when we do an album and a lot of hymns, in fact, we just did mostly hymns this last year, but we've always, since the beginning, like Todd was saying a minute ago, we've always tried to find the backstory of the hymn, especially because, the hymn writers they're all gone now. But, when we do living writers, we always try to talk to the songwriter. What were you going through? What's going on? But the only way to find out with the hymns now is to go back and do your research. So we always try to do that because it does change, I think, the way you would sing it and the way you do it. If you know that, like Todd said, if Fanny Crosby, she's blind, but when she writes lyrics about I will see him, or like Horatio Spafford, knowing that he lost those 4 daughters, that changes the line of when sorrows like sea billows roll, because when he went to be with his wife who had survived that shipwreck, when they got to the spot where the other ship with his daughters had gone down, he asked the captain to let him know and about that proximate area. So he's out on the railing of the ship where he'd lost 4 children that had sunk to the ocean where he was. So those phrases, when sorrows like sea billows roll, even so, it is well with my soul. When you know the context of the song, if you try to figure out where the writer's coming from, that always helps, I think. And it isn't always possible, but we always would try to do that. But I think mostly you can take a hymn straight up as it was and whatever style you choose to do it in, but I don't think you need to really add to it. Now, which that's been another trend, again, like just honest talk with us here, but I've on the whole, I've disliked the trend of lately now too, if a church is going to do a hymn, it's like, well, we still need to tweak it to throw it in here. So we've added a chorus, this or that. Having said that, I think there are times it can help. We do it on the minimal side, like on our last Christmas album. We did "Oh Come All You Faithful," and part of it is it's like you're like, okay, man, how many hundreds of thousands of recordings of "Oh Come All You Faithful" are out there? So sometimes I think it part of it is what could we do to this to still respect the original text, the original intent? Is there anything we could do, since everyone's heard this 1,000 times? Is there anything we could do to maybe make it impact them more, or that they might remember it more or come back to it? And so there's a couple of songs on the Christmas album, a couple of old carols that we added a modern little chorus to, and even then the thought crossed my mind, oh man, are we doing that thing? But in some cases, I think it can elevate the song, or even if not elevate, I think it can just bring it to this modern era, especially if you're taking an old carol that's, hundreds of years old. So I think you have to basically, all that to say, I think you take each song you record, you take it as itself.
Right.
And you say, hey, is this one best with piano vocal? Is this one best as a ballad? Is this one best as a big blues band stomp? That's what we always try to do, is what fits each song the best,
Good.
Yeah, I think Allan brings up some great points there. Like two of the things, a couple of situations I was thinking of. It Is Well and His Eyes on the Sparrow. When we recorded that, we kept it very pure, very, these are those hymns. With "O Come All Ye Faithful," we did that. We added just this, we adore him, Christ the Lord, but it connects with it, and it was a nice lift. Another one was, you have some of these hymns where the lyrics are unbelievable, but the melody is really hard to sing. So like, blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. That's kind of hard to record just where we are currently. So we just kind of slowed it down and made it more of a bluesy thing of like, blessed assurance. Sorry, it's early, so I'm still, Jesus is mine. We just kind of made it that way instead of keeping it like, there's another song, and I haven't figured out the melody to it yet, but it was like the rock and hymn back when I was, 10 and wasn't allowed to listen to Christian rock music. Like Petra,
so no Petra in Todd's house.
Yes.
Why? Striper is just like, get out of here.
Well, my first experience was that because I was a missionary kid, we weren't allowed to listen to anything besides, like, Bing Crosby was as secular as we got. And then it was, Amy and Sandy and the Imperials, but no Petra. And then my sister went to boarding school in Africa, and she comes back to the mission station, and typically we would have electricity from 5 to 10 p.m. every night. Well, Dad, for some reason, had the electricity going during the day, we never got that. That was like a treat. And he was out, must have been doing some construction. And so Sean comes back and she's like, Todd, I've got this tape and the electricity's on. Let's go into Dad's office. And so I put on the headphones. She was like, there's this group and they use guitars and they have long hair and they're Christians. And I was like, what? And I still picture they had to be wearing a suit. Like, they had tennis shoes and long hair, but you better be dressed in a suit because that's how you sing. But anyways, it was More Power to You, that album. Yeah. Which was, for my generation, was like for a lot of people who Jesus Freak was with DC Talk. It was It was this album that really changed everything as far as what we could do. Mm-hmm. And it had this song called Stand Up on it. And the other thing, too, is with Petra's, the lyrics were solid. The theology was solid in what they were doing. Yep. But that song, I heard it, Stand Up, and it was this rocking, almost like a Steve Perry Journey song. It was like, this is unbelievable. I've kind of lost my train of thought. All that to say, I think there are some times where the music is kind of done to, there was this rockin' hymn called Wonderful Grace of Jesus, deeper than all my sin. And it's like, wonderful, the matchless grace of Jesus. Jesus. Really hard to sing. Like, we would never record it just that way. So it could be something where we take that and keep elements of it, but completely change the music just because it's kind of annoying, if that makes sense. So there are times where there is that. But like Allan said, as much as you can keep with the original, I think you should, or, you can do that because most of them melodically are beautiful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So Todd, as we leave, give me, or both of you can, give me like a parting shot on your best advice to worship leaders on a Sunday. Oh. What is one thing that you've learned maybe from the stage, how to engage with an audience? Allan, what do you think? You want to go first?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, I would just say, like Todd had mentioned earlier, you guys have a pretty, probably one of the tough, you and the pastor have the tough jobs, but like Todd said, music, people get so passionate about their styles of music and what they think it should be and what they want. So I'm sure you guys get it a lot. Like Todd was saying, hey, this was too rocking today, or man, it was too dull today. You didn't do any hymns, or you didn't do any worship songs, or that kind of thing. So I know you guys have to do a really tough balancing act. And so right away, I want to say I respect and love that about you, and that you're willing to jump in there and do that, and to try to lead people who have, everybody's opinion is different on what music they love. I mean, that's why music's so diverse, is everybody loves their own thing. So you guys have to kind of corral all of that together for a Sunday morning worship service. Plus, at the same time, try, if you can, to find the songs that kind of maybe match what the pastor's going to talk about. So you have to do all of this within some pretty strong constraints. And so I really, really respect and love that about what you all do. I grew up as a church pianist. So I've been on the worship platform there for a long time, from probably age, 10, 11 at my church, starting to actually get up there and play for the congregation all the way through my high school years and before, and until, well, even through college, I was also playing in churches just as the pianist. So, and once in a while I would speak into the song selections, but not much. So I've been on the platform also with you. And I think just openness and honesty. Like, I always loved our worship leaders. Well, like Todd mentioned too, if you can make the song have a connection with people, I think that really, really speaks, and they're open more to receiving it. And also, when you're honest with your own life struggles, and we found that on stage with us. Like, I love it. Our fans will write to us all the time, or email or whatever, or afterwards, and they're all like, they'll be like, "Oh, I wish you could just come to my wedding," or "I wish," or like, "I wish I could just go have a meal with you guys and sit and talk." And they're like, "I feel like I know you." And I love that because I think we try to be, we're just real people doing what God's called us to do. What we do may be visible, more visible than a lot of jobs, if they're on a stage or you see records in the store or whatever. But, that's not, we're just one piece of what we're all doing for the kingdom.
Right.
And so, I think that openness and that honesty as a worship leader, if people sense that your whole heart's in it and that you love them and that you love the songs and you're wanting to make this hour of church or however long it is, if you're wanting to ease their burden, because, you got to go back to the work week the next day or whatever. You don't know what people are facing in their life.
Mm-hmm.
If they can sense coming from yourself, your heart, that you're there to serve them and you're there to love them and you're there to help for even this short time of church service to help maybe ease their burden or encourage them, they'll respond to that. And I think if all leaders could strive for that, that's a beautiful thing to see that in someone.
Good.
Todd, what about you? Parting shot.
Man, the thing that comes to mind that has stuck with me for decades is Charlie Daniels. He was a big country artist. He sang "Devil Went Down to Georgia" and big fiddle player. And he came and spoke at Belmont. We would have artists come in and speak every once in a while. And I remember him saying, I don't care if you're singing in front of 50 people or 50,000 people. You give everything you have because they gave of their time and their love, and they're buying your tickets. They got out of their houses and came, to your concert. And I know this is a church setting, so it's a little different, but whether you've got 75 people show up to service 4 or 5,000 show up to the Saturday night service, give everything that you have. And especially when you're in that third and fourth concert. And I've done that. Like, I wasn't full-time like how Allan was, but like at my church, we actually went to the same church for a while, but they had different campuses. And sometimes you'd have 4 and 5 services. Mm-hmm. I was usually just doing the special, but I was tired by the, service 4. And as a worship leader, if you're getting beat up or, you can just sense when people are connecting and when they're not, but sometimes your feelings aren't always accurate. And even in a concert setting, there are plenty of times where one of us we come backstage and I'm like, oh man, that audience is dead. And Allan's like, really? Oh man, I feel so connected to them. There's one in particular in relation.
It's because Allan's more spiritual.
That's true. Well, that's a given. We all know that. So, but with what Charlie said, I've always tried to remember that when we've had 17 people in a 700 seat venue, or when it's just like a brick wall, it's like, am I getting through? And I remember there was one concert we did years ago where it was only half full. And they were all sitting on the left-hand side, and the sound guy decided not to show up, but to put his 16-year-old son in charge of sound. And he didn't know whether we needed actual monitors or TV monitors. And so if that gives you any idea of how the quality of the sound, it was awful. And I remember throughout the whole concert just being like, I want out of this. I hate this. Like, I want to go back home. And there was a segment where my sister Nicole, back when she was with us, she had a solo project. And so she would do like 3 or 4 songs. And so I could not wait to get to that point so I could go backstage and hang out. Part of me didn't want to go back out. It was like, this is a waste of time. But of course I did, and went and sang. And then we come backstage and I'm feeling sorry for myself. And, though they didn't love us and pat me on the back the way I wanted them to, but this woman made her way back. She's probably 43, and it was like she could read my mail. And she was like, I don't know if you felt like you were supposed to be here. I don't know if you felt like God was using you, but I just want you to know that every single song you sang, I feel like was a direct message from Jesus, reminding me that he loves me. My husband just left me last week and just took off. And so I just want you to know that those songs connected with me in such a powerful way. So when you're singing and you're feeling beat down, or certain people are complaining that it's not this right music, or it's not that, man, just try to be as genuine and as authentic as you can. And even when you don't feel like you're being sincere enough, get up there and do it and sing it and ask for God's help, because it's in our weakness that his strength shows. Mm-hmm. And you never know how he's going to use your words or the songs to connect with certain people that day you just don't know what they're going through. And I've just seen it so many times where based off of my feelings, it was a horrible day. It was a horrible concert, but God was moving regardless of how I felt, and he was connecting with people. So just remember that when you're in service 6 or 7 or whatever, it's 8 a.m. and you're like, why am I here? And you just keep pushing through and giving everything that you have.
Yeah, that's a great word, man. Great encouragement. Well, so appreciate what you guys do. You bring so much to the kingdom, and we're so grateful for it. I know you guys have a great new hymns project out, Volume 3, and then new Christmas project last year. That's great for every Christmas. So be sure to, if you're listening, be sure to check those albums out and keep up with these guys. Guys, thank you so much for your time today and your insight. Just so grateful.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks for having us.
At 1230 Media, we want to help you make Sunday happen. That's why we've created a library of content with great media perfect for your Good Friday and Easter services. We've produced hundreds of Easter openers, mini-movies, countdowns, themed service packs, editable graphics, full series kits, and more. We want to give you powerful media content to help you share the message of Jesus' death and resurrection this Easter season. Start downloading Easter media content today. It's all in the library at 1230.media/Easter. That's 1230.media/Easter.
The show notes for this episode are available now at makingsundayhappen.com.
Well, hey guys, thanks so much for hanging out this week. If you like our podcast, be sure to take a minute to subscribe, like, and share wherever you get your podcast so that you never miss an episode. And next week on the show, I welcome the Jack Bauer of Church Security. Simon Osimo will be in the house. We'll be talking about how to secure your church building for Sunday. I'll also be having Roger Blaylock on the show. I'll be talking with Roger about how to secure your computer network for Sunday. So keeping your people and your systems secure so that you can make Sunday happen. That's next week on the show. It's all leading up to episode number 400 with worship leader and recording artist Chris Tomlin. He'll be on the podcast in just a few weeks on that milestone episode for us, episode number 400. Everything's leading up to that. Can't wait. So go out there and create some incredible worship experiences at your church this weekend. We love you guys. I'll see you next week.
Making Sunday Happen is a production of the ministry of 1230 Media. For show notes, archive episodes, and more free resources for your church, visit makingsundayhappen.com.